Hi, I'm Denise Robitaille. I'd like to tell you a little about our video on Introduction to Management Review. Management review is the process that we use to assess the status of our organization. It's how we identify opportunities for improvement.
Enjoy this preview of Introduction to Management Review with Denise Robitaille.
Hello everyone, I'm Denise Robitaille, the author of the Management Review Handbook. And today we're going to be talking about management review, that essential link between top management and organizational improvement. So, what exactly is management review? Well, it's a process for assessing the status, effectiveness, and continued suitability of the organization's quality management system. It's the decision-making process allowing for allocation of resources and authorization of action items for improvement. What does management review actually look like? Well, one of the things you have to remember about management review is that it's not an obituary. It is not this passive report that you use to rehash all the things that have happened in the last year or in the last 6 months. This is a dynamic process. This is the process that you need in order to plan what is going to happen going forward. So the inputs into this process, and you have to remember that all processes have inputs, the inputs into this process is the data that is analyzed, and that drives the decisions which are the output of management review. So again, management has a process. This is their process. It must be a controlled process. The inputs into this process, all the data that has been gathered, that is aggregated and put into a format for the purpose of management review, then all of the activities within the management review itself, and then the output of that are the decisions and the records of all of the other actions that have been determined during the management review process. So if you look at it in terms of top management's process, you have the inputs, and that would include things like internal audits, data from performance indicators, all of the monitoring that's done of different processes, customer feedback, all of those things would be under the heading of inputs. Then you have the activities, so that would involve assessing things, analyzing the data. You're going to revise objectives, and we'll talk a lot about objectives farther on in this presentation. And then the decision-making process. And so the outputs of that would be the authorized action items and the allocation of resources. That's how this process works. It's very, very interesting to note that in the ISO standard under the management review process, they never mentioned the word meeting. So in actuality, in technical actuality, there is no requirement for top management to have a face-to-face meeting. Having said that, that is probably still the single most effective way for most organizations to conduct their management reviews. However, in this day and age, we do have other options. We've got teleconferencing, we have web conferencing. You can actually have something that is completely virtual where people have threaded discussions on a secure section of their server. In a very small organization, you could have paper copies that are circulated with notations made in them, and then at the end of that, just a very, very brief summary meeting. So the format is what works for you. Again, some of the considerations, obviously, geography is one of the biggest ones. If your top managers are scattered across 3 continents, it's not particularly efficient to drag them in every 3 months for a giant meeting in one particular location. In that case, you might have less frequent meetings, or you might choose for 3 out of 4 of those meetings to be virtual meetings, to be either web conferences or teleconferences. So you get to choose that. You get to decide that, but you've got to make sure that you've got appropriate control. Just because you change the format doesn't mean that it changes the requirements about what you need to review. So join me for Intro to Management Review.
The Introduction to Management Review training video is available at PeytonProfessional.com.